this is a Nobel Prize negotiation. I kind of got Paul. Let's see if I can see this
out. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shirley Tillman. I'm the president of Princeton University, and I am very happy to welcome all of you to this press conference in honor of Professor Paul Krugman, who won today's Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. This is a very exciting day, primarily for Professor Krugman, but also for Princeton University. And I hope that all of you agree that the uptick in the market today is a direct response to the recognition of Professor Krugman and the extraordinary work that he has done as an economist over a very long and distinguished career. Professor Krugman, I suspect, is less of a stranger to the world than most Nobel laureates in economics because of his role as an op-ed columnist for the New York Times. He has become very much a public intellectual. And so I believe that this prize is going to be greeted very enthusiastically by the many people who have, as I have learned economics, reading that column religiously twice a week in the New York Times. I'm going to introduce first Anne-Marie Slaughter, the Dean of the Woodrow Wilson School, who's going to say a few words. She will be followed by Professor Chris Paxson, the Chair of the Department of Economics, and then we will have lots of opportunities to hear from Professor Krugman. Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Paul Krugman's dean. I will be wearing that label for a while. So if normally we say that success has many fathers, in this case, success has many mothers. So there are three of us speaking here. I just want to say a word about Paul Krugman as a boundary crosser. His work for which he won the Nobel Prize is crossing the boundaries within economics of trade theory and economic geography. I know him as someone who has crossed the boundary from Nobel quality theoretical economics to being a public intellectual who spends a tremendous amount of time educating as wide an audience as he can, bringing all his knowledge to bear, the knowledge that he helped himself to develop, to put it in the service of a particular point of view, more broadly, to put it in the hands of as wide as possible as an audience. And I want to mention in that regard that in addition to his theoretical work and his columns, he is also the author of noted textbooks, which again serve to introduce as many economics students as possible to economics generally and to international trade theory. So we salute him in the Woodrow Wilson School, a school of public and international affairs, for crossing boundaries, doing cutting-edge theoretical work, but also translating it to a much broader audience. Paul, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Chris Paxson. I'm chair of the economics department here. I don't want to talk long because I know that you want to hear from Paul, but I thought I should say a few words about the importance of Paul's research to the field of economics because he may be too modest to tell you how important his work has been himself. His work on international trade and economic geography represents a major leap forward from the neoclassical theories of international trade that preceded it. These were the theories that I learned as a graduate student, and they were pretty simple. Flows of imports and exports were explained in terms of countries' endowments of resources, that's K and L for students in the room, and also by differences in their technologies. What Paul did was take this standard theory and really just change it a lot, real paradigm shift. He discarded the notion that firms don't decide where to set up shop, that people don't make decisions about where to live and work, and instead what he did was he created a unified theory of trade and the location of economic activity in a world in which firms enjoy economies of scale, consumers demand a richly diverse set of consumer goods, and international trade may be limited by transport costs. So this theory is able to answer some really simple but important questions, such as why do countries import and export the same goods sometimes? Why do seemingly similar countries have very different industrial bases? Why do we see dense urban areas with a lot of economic activity surrounded by rural areas that don't have very much going on at all? So these are really important questions. Okay.
Already there's...
That was important too.
Somebody liked what you said.
Yeah, I know. Let me just say one more thing. The importance of Paul's work.
Excuse me, everyone on the phone, please maintain your silence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to conclude, the impact of Paul's research cannot be overstated. His most influential article on this subject, I think, is called Increasing Returns in Economic Geography, and it was published in 1991 in the Journal of Political Economy. I looked it up this morning on Google Scholar, and it is listed as having 3,667 citations. I expect that number will climb quickly, too. It is a classic on the reading list of graduate courses in international trade. And I think the other thing that's really important to note is that besides having a lot of significance to the field of economics and research in economics, Paul's research has a lot of practical significance. It helps us understand the drivers behind globalization, urbanization, capital movements across countries, and we're very grateful that he's done this work. So we're very proud of Paul and his contributions to economics, and we're thrilled to see them recognized in the form of a Nobel Prize. Thank you.
And now, Professor Paul Krugman.
Thank you. It's, in case you want to know how these things work, I actually took the call stark naked because I was about to step into the shower this morning. And my immediate conclusion was that that was an obviously fake Swedish accent, and they were just, okay. Look, I don't think I should say very much now. It's an incredible honor. It's stunning. It doesn't quite settle in. Thanks go, as always, to one's teachers. I wouldn't have gone down this route if it hadn't been for Jagdish Bhagwati, who introduced me to the earlier form of trade theory, which is a marvelous, beautiful, insightful enormous body of work, and that was what led me into working in international trade. The late Rudy Dornbush of MIT, who was my thesis advisor, not on the international finance side of things, which I've also done some work on, but who actually was the one who encouraged me to pursue this particular line of work, and it was an enormously important thing. There's something in a way awkward about having any individual get these prizes, because there is a college that's much larger than any particular university. There is a collection of people who work together, and I feel that in some sense I ought to be sharing this with all the others who participated, who made it possible. Any list of people I mentioned is going to be awkward in some way because I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, somebody terribly important. But let me just say, none of this line of work would have been possible without the work of Nobel laureate Joe Stiglitz and one of my Princeton colleagues, Avinash Dixit, who actually we were just joking in the last seminar here, Avinash and I, whether this seminar would manage to get through without yet another Dixit Stiglitz, and it didn't. So we had and this whole line of work on increasing returns and trade is a multi-person effort. Some of my most important work was done in collaboration with Elchanan Helpman of Tel Aviv and Harvard. Elchanan in turn has done collaboration with Gene Grossman of our department, who is another one of the major figures in this field. So it is really a collegial effort. And it's great. On behalf of international trade people everywhere, I'd like to thank the Nobel Committee for recognizing this field, which we think has been transformed in this past 30 years, and it's good to see that recognized. Beyond that, my God, this one Nobel Prize can discombobulate your whole day. And here I am. Thank you all so much. Thanks. Oh, and I should say, of course, my wife could not be here, but thanks to her for seeing me through all of this. She's got her own life, so we've been trading cell phone messages, missed all today with only one actual connection. Okay.
So for those of you wondering, who's that other guy and what's he doing up there? I'm Bob Perkey, the Vice President and Secretary here at the university, and this event is actually a press conference. We have some press in this room, and as you've been hearing, we have some press literally from around the world on the phone. And so what we're going to try to do is to invite some of the press on the phone to ask questions. If you can't hear them, I'm going to try to repeat them. Let Professor Krugman respond to them, and then we'll get to the press in the room. So, is there someone on the phone who would like to ask a question?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
This is Alicia Gonzalez calling from El País in Madrid. First of all, congratulations, Mr. Krugman. And I would like to know that if you think that your critical position with neoliberalism is backed today with this prize, just when we are in the middle of an economic crisis and financial crisis. Thank you.
Okay, well, the question is, does Professor Krugman think that his position is supported by being given this prize?
Well, it was actually specifically about neoliberalism, which is about a critique of free market orthodoxy. Look, this stuff is increasing returns in trade. Economic geography is definitely about imperfect markets. It's not a if you're a believer that everything was in actually I'm being unfair to Adam Smith. If you're a believer that everything is in supply and demand, then this work won't please you very much. It's not tremendously, in any direct way, a clear policy implication, at least in terms of it's for example, the work has an ambiguous implication with regard to free trade. Says that free trade might not be the best thing, but on the other hand, that freeing up trade could actually produce bigger gains than the standard models have it. So I don't think it bears a whole very directly on this politics.
Okay, is the next question?
Yes, hi, it's Francesco Semprini from the Italian Daily News La Stampa. Congratulations, Professor Krugman first, and then this morning Italian Premier Berlusconi and President Bush met at the White House. Actually, do you think that, what the European, the U.S. government have done so far is enough to overcome the crisis? And do you think that they, gave a late answer to the financial crisis, they are doing the right thing, in your opinion?
Question from Italy about whether the European banks have done enough to address the financial crisis.
Right, so look, obviously, it hasn't been enough so far, right? Things are getting worse, and I've been writing about that a lot. Yesterday was the first day I actually felt that policymakers exceeded expectations instead of falling short, that the actual decisions reached in that European summit were better than I expected, and so that was favorable. And I'm feeling more optimistic today than I was, let's say, Thursday. It looks like policy is starting to make more sense, but nobody knows. I think we've clearly been on the wrong track up till now, and it's terrifying. We have, I'm more hopeful now than I was a few days ago.
Next question? Is there a next question? Okay, we may have satisfied the questions on the phone for the moment. Is there a question?
The trouble is that somebody doesn't have their phone muted, so we couldn't hear you, sir. So if everybody could mute their phones, silencio por favor.
That having been said, is there a question?
Mr. Krugman, can I ask you to repeat that, just because we were all anxious to hear your response. We got about a third of it because somebody was not muted.
Oh, okay.
A request to repeat the answer.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Just say you're more optimistic than you were.
Yeah, no, I thought I could just, maybe I'll just give a completely different answer, right? A second opinion. All right, no, obviously the policies have been wrong so far, or have been insufficient so far. They're looking better as of today than they were a week ago, better today than they were Thursday. The European summit was actually encouraging. For once, it was better, more forceful, and more focused than people expected. So that's good news. But we will see. It looks. I think we're intellectually starting to get a grip on this thing. Whether we're actually financially starting to get a grip on it is not yet clear.
Okay, another question? Okay, is there someone in the room who would like to ask a question? Yeah, right here.
Now that you have a Nobel, if you ran this country, what would you be doing?
Okay. I mean, there's a long, long list of things, right? I mean, there's right. Okay, well, first of all, financial crisis needs an answer, and I would be saying, more or less import directly what Gordon Brown did in Britain this morning, and do it here tomorrow. Massive capital injection into the financial system, temporary guarantees on interfinancial institution lending, just get the crisis under control. Large-scale fiscal stimulus program, aid to state and local governments, infrastructure spending, get us out of this recession. And then after all that, universal health care. And then we can get to some serious stuff after that.
Yes, here in the front row.
Question over here, yep.
Oh, boy. I have to be...
Excuse me for 1 second, just for those
Yeah.
on the phone. The
Sorry.
question was, can China and emerging markets sustain their growth, and how does Professor Krugman think Hong Kong should respond to this crisis?
The truth is, I haven't thought about Hong Kong for 10 years, 9 years. I haven't really tried to think that through and looked at any numbers, so I don't have any recommendations. It's my general response to a lot of the emerging market issues I used to write about a lot is that I've been spending the last few years trying to save my own damn republic. About China, I mean, one thing we certainly learned with a vengeance is that decoupling, the decoupling hypothesis that said emerging markets could sail on through while there was trouble in the wealthy nations is wrong. We're having coupling with a vengeance. Turns out that the international financial linkages are just much stronger than we really appreciated. Now you look back and you say financial globalization has clearly advanced enormously since the mid-1990s, but we hadn't really thought through what the consequences of that were, and they turn out to be very, very large. So no, the answer is we really are all in this together.
Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations on the great international honor. Two-part question. How much responsible was the policy of deregulation contributed toward this international crisis? And secondly, do you think there'll ever be any accountability legally for the
Two-part question. How responsible was the policy of deregulation for the current financial crisis, and will there be accountability for those who practiced excess?
Yeah, so on the first, I actually have a pat line on that now. It's not what the regulators did, it's what they didn't do. So it's not, you try and look at, was the repeal of Glass-Steagall really all that important? And it's hard to make that case. You can try a little bit, but you can't. But what mainly happened was that the financial system evolved around the existing regulatory framework, and no effort was made to update the framework to keep up with it. So we moved from a system where good old-fashioned banks, which are fairly heavily regulated and have a safety net, were the core of the system to this shadow banking system, parallel banking system, and no effort was made to extend things like capital requirements, appropriate discount windows, to supervision to that system, and in fact there was positive sanctioning of any attempt to do anything about that. So that's what happened. It's the fact that as the system outgrew the old regulations, the regulations were not expanded to take account of the system. The trouble, there's a lot of grotesque greed underneath this crisis, but greed isn't illegal, and since there were, for the most part, no regulations, I don't think there's going to be very much that can. We'd like to see some of the bums in jail, or at least in stocks in the public square, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yes, sir, over here. Can I ask those on the phone, please, not to be talking while we're conducting the press conference? This question is about the positions of the presidential candidates.
Yeah, okay, look, the presidential candidates have not been taking the lead in proposing solutions to the current crisis, which you wouldn't expect them to, right? These are difficult issues. They're fairly technical. There have been some really bad ideas coming. If Senator McCain was actually proposing having the government buy up home mortgages at face value, which he seems to have been proposing, that was a really bad idea. That was and there have been some. I don't have any problem with the statement of principles that's been coming out of the Obama side. They haven't taken a lead role, but the candidates do have a track record on these issues, and basically Senator McCain has been very anti-regulation, and Senator Obama has tended to be pro, and I'm pro on the regulation, so there's that. But it's, this is a bit much. Honestly, it's very difficult for anyone except a Ministry of Finance to come up with solutions in the middle of this kind of thing. And so our Ministry of Finance should have the responsibility. It would be kind of nice if we actually did have a sophisticated government, but in any case, that may change in the near future.
Yes, up in the back. Thank you. He's not sitting in the press section.
Oh, okay. So the question was, to what extent are the prizes being given to people who promoted anti-Bush policies? A lot of Nobel Prizes are given to intellectuals. A lot of intellectuals are anti-Bush. I don't think they're. I think if you were to do. I think if you did the crosstabs there, you wouldn't find there was any excess representation.
Right in front, yeah.
As a communicator of economic knowledge, I was wondering, at this point in time, what would you want to communicate to the American public right now? Are we in need of some sort of paradigm shift or a way to rethink the way we look at the world?
Question about what Professor Krugman would like to communicate to the American public, and do we need a paradigm shift?
Oh, boy. I hate that sort of, look, we certainly do need some rethinking. Some of you may say, yesterday I was on Stephanopoulos' TV show, and I couldn't help but notice that our host, talking about the injections of capital into financial institutions, of government capital that are now being proposed, he referred to it twice as partial privatization, which is just, it's actually partial nationalization, right? But we've been so much in the idea that everything is towards more private, less public, that it's almost, it's Freudian slip. He said that's what we partially do. And so people do need to understand that the world is more complicated than the story you've been told. The government is always the problem, never the solution. But also, it's just more complicated, even quite aside from the political aspect. I mean, this financial crisis is I reproach myself. I mean, I look back now and I say I had all of the stuff in my intellectual toolkit to have seen this coming. And I saw parts of it. I saw the housing bubble. But why didn't I understand that the same kinds of balance sheet constraints, the same kind of vicious circles that took place in Indonesia in 1997 or in Argentina in 2002 could happen here once the housing bubble burst? Why didn't I think that through? So we all, we don't expect the public to be doing modeling, but I think everybody needs to understand that the world has got dangers in it. There are monsters that you may have thought were mythical, but they turn out to be entirely real.
Yeah, and go here. I'll stay right here for a minute.
Do you consider yourself at this point to be more of a commentator, columnist, or more of an academic?
Question as to whether he considers himself to be more a commentator, columnist, or an academic.
I still think that the university is home. That's ultimately who I am. But you do different things. People, academics in their 50s have a tendency to try stuff that's outside the narrow academics, and I'm doing that too. But I don't. Do I have to make that decision? I prefer not to.
We're not kicking you out.
Yeah.
Yes, right here.
Professor, I think it was Professor Paxson, credited you for making economic science more available through your work to the masses. I'm embarrassed to ask, but in a statement, is it possible for you to encapsulate your work for which you've been awarded?
A question of whether you can encapsulate the work for which he's been recognized.
On trade, The previous theory said that countries trade with each other to take advantage of their differences. That you have a warm climate, I have a cold climate, we can do different stuff. The new theory says countries also trade to take advantage of the inherited advantages of just specializing on different things. You and I might be just as good a brain surgeon as you, and you might be just as good an economics professor as me, but the world is better off, and if one of us becomes a brain surgeon, the other a college professor, and we don't both try to do both. And that applies to international trade, so we end up producing different goods. So it's specialization because there are inherent advantages to specialization, as opposed to because one country is necessarily better than at some things. And on geography, it's saying that a lot of the reason why things are where they are is because other things are where they are. Why are there 60 million people crowded into a fairly narrow strip of coastline here? What is it about the east coast of the United States that makes 60 million people want to live in this dense metropolitan strip? And the answer is it's not something about the coastline. Each of those 60 million people wants to be there because the other 60 million people are there. And that's the essential part of the economic geography.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Krugman, still a question from Italy. What do you think about the idea to create a wider group inside the G8 and to reform the Bretton Woods institutions?
I've never been able to figure out what I think about these institutional arrangements. I know it's terribly important, but I really have no views. Would the G8 be better as probably we should have a group, if not now, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of our lives, we ought to have China and India in these groups because they've become such major economies. But I don't have any thought about exactly how big that thing should be. Bretton Woods, no. I mean, I don't think, I'm almost annoyed as someone who's worked a lot on currency crises, that exchange rates and all of that don't seem to be at all at the heart of this crisis. And I don't see that we need to reform the exchange regime. Other stuff, yes, but the exchange regime hasn't, at least at the moment, seemed to be in critical need of change.
Sir.
Now that you've won the prize, do you think this will silence some of your critics, like
No. We already, sorry, the question was, will the prize silence some of my critics? I just got emailed as I was on my way here, and there's an absolute spitting. So this guy in particular, my stalker, has, in case you were wondering, has not had even a second of grace. So no, don't worry about it.
Way up in the back.
Asking you 10 years
for advice for a young academic economist.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, the question is advice for young academics. You know, boy, nothing earth-shattering except don't overthink it. Follow what seems interesting. I mean, when I went to grad school, I had been working as an undergraduate on energy policy. That was what I did, and I came in thinking this was what was going to be important. It was 1974. Energy was going to be important. That's what I ought to be doing. And somehow, what I found was really interesting in my courses was international economics, which and I was actually specifically advised by a number of people, don't do international trade. It's boring, and it's kind of worked out okay.
Yes, up here. Yes.
Could you tell us what stage do you think we are in this financial crisis? What do we need to do? What do we absolutely need to do to turn the corner?
Question of where we are in this financial crisis and what we need to do to rebound.
You know, absolutely. I mean, we absolutely need that combination of capital injections and guarantees. Otherwise, the spiral, the vicious circle of deleveraging just continues. I'm not sure that I know how you think about stages here. I mean, with luck, maybe the acute financial crisis stuff will start to fade out in the next couple of months, though we don't even know that for sure. But if the measures that are now finally being undertaken are enough, then the acute stuff fades out, but the recession is still gathering force. The real economy is still suffering. I did manage to make a meeting for about an hour this morning where people, the governor of the Bank of Japan was talking. And I hadn't realized the extent to which Japan had some parallel but localized experiences in 1997. And it went on. It just, every time you think that you've resolved it, once you're in one of these things, something else comes along to make the crisis broader and the costs larger than you thought they were. So I'm really hesitant to say about where we are right now. I mean, at each stage of this thing, every time you think you've hit bottom, it turns out that another floor collapses underneath you and you go down further. So who knows?
Yes, over here. Yes.
Thanks.
Question of where he's putting his money.
A lot is in cash. See, we've got this pit in the backyard. I will say I have bought some munis because I believe that in the end we will rescue, that California will not be allowed to slide into the sea and all of that. But who knows? But I don't know. Great investors. I can explain to you very carefully why I do what I do, and have an only so-so track record. Whereas the really great investors are completely incapable of explaining what they do, but they somehow do know what to do, and I'm not one of them. So instinct beats analysis every time.
And right over here.
No, that's what people say. It's not what I say.
Government's part of this.
Question of whether he would like to be a cabinet member.
And the answer is no, absolutely not. I'm temperamentally unsuited. I say the wrong things. Gene would know. Asaf lasted one day. Asaf Razin of Tel Aviv University, who's a friend, was Minister of Finance in Israel for one day. And then said the wrong thing, and I believe that's right, and I think I would be in that category, so no, not me.
Did I see a former dean of the Wilson School with a question?
Well, you mentioned that the regulatory mechanism is broken because the financial system evolved out of
Yeah.
what it was meant to regulate. Do you have an idea of what principles or guidelines that would be backbone of the new regulatory mechanism?
Question about the right principles or guidelines for a new regulatory mechanism.
I think it's the same principles as the old one, suitably adjusted, and beyond that I get a little blurry, but capital requirements, probably some requirement to hold a sufficient amount of liquid assets, which are the equivalent of reserve requirements. Basically anything that has to be rescued like a bank has to be regulated like a bank. Anything that borrows short and lends long is a bank, and it turns out is strategic. I mean, that was the consequences of allowing laymen to fail, I think, demonstrated that institutions that are not depository nonetheless can wreak all the same havoc that the failure of a depository institution can. So just essentially update and expand the regulations that, the New Deal had it right, and it just needs to be updated to the modern system.
We'll take just two more questions. Someone who hasn't had a chance? Yes?
What does the financial crisis say about compared to the real economy? Because thinking of the impact of the crisis on the economy, does it reflect that the real economy is the wrong path, and this could be a chance to gear towards a more diverse resources?
What does the financial crisis say about the real economy?
Well, gosh, I mean, we had an enormous housing bubble, which was both a mispricing and also way excessive resources devoted to home construction. And so that is where that's the source of the shock. But there's also a lot more, I think, that doesn't say much about the real economy. I think that a lot of this financial havoc is, you know, that whatever it is, 5 trillion, 6 trillion of losses from the bursting of the housing bubble. Only about 1 trillion has actually showed up in financial institutions, but that 1 trillion has turned out to have one hell of an impact. So I'm not sure it's you know, oh God, my favorite John Maynard Keynes quote is the one where he said during the onset of the Great Depression, we have magneto trouble, which roughly speaking is alternator trouble. That it's not the whole engine that's broken, there's just this one specific piece. And that's, I think, the case right now, that there's this one specific piece. It's not that the entire engine is, you know, there are other problems with the real economy, but the financial crisis is not telling you that everything was rotten.
Okay, one final. Okay, you get another chance.
Did you go ahead and have your meeting in Washington this morning? How did that go?
I went to the first, the question was, did I go to my meeting in Washington? I went to the first hour because, first of all, I thought it was a courtesy, and second, I thought that our former department chairman might be speaking there. He was on the program. That's Ben Bernanke. And he was apparently off trying to save the world instead. So, but I was curious to see what he would have to say. So, and actually, the really interesting thing was the governor of the Bank of Japan. I realize now that even though I did a lot on Japan back when it was in crisis, there's a lot more I need to learn. So it was interesting, and I wish I could have stayed for more of the meeting, but I thought that my presence was required here.
Thanks.